Hi everyone, this is Caragnos from Barstone. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different, which is I'm going to show you the new template that I'm setting up to record my ideas that I have for Barstone. So up until now, I've done about 4 tracks for this project, and I've been building a logic file from scratch, and I've taken a lot of tips from the internet, from like Nolly from Get Good and Irmin Havidovic and people who do a lot of great tutorials, and I've come to sort of fix a project for my ideas which is very well. Let's say there's just so many things that I put in there that I have no idea anymore what they actually were good for, because as I'm going along with this I am actually just learning. And this I want to say up front is that if anything here that you see makes you think like, that if you could do that way easier, way simpler or better, please go ahead and tell me, because I am an amateur and I'm just trying to record my music and make it sound as good as I can with as little outside help as possible. I kind of like to just do things myself. That's why I started to write and record music, because I just don't only want to listen to really heavy crushing riffs and music, I just wanted to do it myself. And it's tricky, and this is where I am right now, where I'm actually setting up a new template for my ideas, where I kind of reset all my mixing tips and techniques that I've learned so far, apply them in new template, and then just go from there and try to get better again. So let's get started for real now. What I have is very simple: drums, bass, and 2 rhythm guitars. One left, one right. That's it. I have this for recording, so I record something here and then I drag and drop it wherever I want to have it. So what it sounds like now, with all that I've done up until now, all the plugins, even the master chain that you can see here, the guitars, the bass, here's the drums, and what I did to them, sounds like this. So that's a very simple kind of bluesy riff that I just recorded to have something to actually mix. So let's start with drums. What I have is an instance of One Kid Wonder Aggressive Rock from GGD. I recently used Easy Drummer 2, but now I kind of got bored, and also Corona made me buy a lot of new things that I maybe don't necessarily need, but find it fun. So I bought this and I set it up. So I have 7 outputs, not only stereo, but I have 7 outputs. So I can actually mix those separate tracks here in Logic. And when I set it up like that, I have to select the contact. It runs via Native Instruments contact. And I set it to multi-output 16 times stereo. It's not actually 16 tracks, it's just 6, yeah, or 7. But that's the way to go if you want to mix those a little bit separately. So let's listen only to the drums. Here I have a drum bass. I'm gonna single that out. That's the drums. What I have here on the kick is a plugin called Supercharger. It's free, it's from Native Instruments. When I downloaded the contact player for the GGD plugin, I saw that this is free and it sounded really cool in the description, so I tried it, and I think it sounds killer. I have it set to a dirty kick, and that's it. And then I have a channel EQ, and there's actually nothing on there. Well, so much for the kick. Very easy. I mean, this kit is pre-mixed anyway, so you're not even supposed to need a lot of things to make it sound really good, but there's definitely a little bit to enhance there, I would say, even for me as an amateur. Then we have, actually we can just take this away. We have the snare. I have first an EQ. Snare sounds like this. I have a high pass filter around 100 Hertz. I'm pushing a little bit of 184, taking out a little bit here, 320, 510, and pushing again at 2K, and then a high shelf at 5K. Without, it sounds like this. And with. Doesn't sound like too much of a difference, but yeah, doing a lot of little things ends up being a lot of has a lot of effect. So I try to keep it very slight. Otherwise, in the end, I end up with like something really weird because there's just been too much editing. That's what I feel like. Next thing, the compression. Gives it a lot. The evil snare. The evil snare template. No, what do you call it? Yeah, the setting. Actually, the kick also does a lot. Yeah, makes it a little fatter. We have no toms right here, so let's go over to the overhead. The overheads, I have them side chained with the snare drum actually. You can see when I engage the snare, I have the snare kind of pushing down the overhead so they come a little better through. Easy to just select side chain. And here you select the bass, so you have only the snare, which is here. Then we have the mono drums. Those I just distort the shit out of them, and I find, like, I've seen this, I think from Misha Mansour, he does that too, or somebody else, I think it was him, and they kind of make, it kind of melts together with the rest of the drums, and I feel like also with the guitars and the bass, because it's just distorted, everything that's distorted kind of flows together and melts together in a way, from my experience at least. Yes, so it melts together. Maybe I should not talk while I play something. Okay, the distortion just makes everything that's distorted, like guitars and bass, melt together. Then we have the room. I have a supercharger here on as well. Just some compression. And that's it for the drums. I mean, there is a drum compression running. I also use supercharger with the parallel slam setting, and I have a snare verb. That's actually quite interesting. That the snare verb makes the snare ring much longer, gives it more body and makes it come through a little better, I feel like. Yeah, gives it much more body. It's just a way of setting this up so that it's not too long and it's really in the right timing. Yeah, 60 milliseconds seems right. Also for the tempo, you have to be aware which tempo you are in. Now I'm in 127 beats per minute, because it should fit in the grid of the rhythm. Otherwise, it gets weird. And drum compression, like I said, here I routed out the snare and the kick drum to these two buses. So when I compress the overheads, for example, for the snare, I can select the bus 8. And the next thing on the agenda is the bass. I also compress the bass, and I have a sidechain to the kick because I want the kick to step on the bass and come through. Not too much, but just as much as it's, well, I feel like sounds good. Let's listen to the bass. What I have here is the neural USB parallax, does almost everything. The eye sounds like this. Then I have the parallax, and I have an EQ. I cut off below 28 Hertz. When I tune my guitar, my bass guitar, the lowest note, in this case it's a B. It's resonating around, I think it's 30 Hertz. So below that I don't play anything, I cut it off. At least that's my logic. Correct me if I'm wrong or if that's stupid, but also it just gives me, if I don't use this part of the frequency spectrum, I can make everything else louder in the end on the master bus. Then I push here, I drop it here at 2K, and I push it again at 4K. And later on with the guitars, actually let's just look at it right now. Here, when I take out the guitar EQ, you can see that I'm doing quite the opposite. While here I'm pushing at 745, here I'm cutting. I'm cutting at 2K, and here I'm pushing at 2K. I'm pushing at 4K, and here I'm cutting at 4K. And that way, the guitars and the bass, they just meld together, because I have a lot of gain on the distortion on the bass, and obviously the guitars are heavily distorted, and distortion, also with the distortion coming here from the actually the mono track from the drums, that all makes everything kind of glued together. Yes, so let's listen to the bass once more. I have also a compression, that's the kick. Like I said, whoops, switch that back to the kick. And let's add in the guitars. So for the guitars, I use archetype Nolly, and I have a preset with here the lead amp, and I like this cabinet with it. I have an overdrive. I actually don't have this EQ engaged because I'm doing basically the same on the equalizer that I use from Logic after the plugin. I could just use this one, it sounds very similar, but I'm using the one from Logic right now. And these are the guitars alone. What I have here is the equalizer, like I said, and also a tube equalizer, which is a trick that I just learned today actually, and I kind of like it for now. What this does is, so when I open this up, that's very important. Both archetype Nolly, it has to be, well, stereo, at least stereo, but the tube equalizer, it's dual mono. I think it has to be like that. Because I want, because I have two rhythm guitars. One is panned left and one is panned right. Okay, so I need both of those guitars to be affected, but I don't want them to go through a single plugin or like a plugin that's not stereo, because then it would sound mono again, and then I would lose all the width. That's why I record two guitars in the first place. But like this it works, and I have a left and a right here. And the difference is that the left, I set the high boost to 3 dB. I set it at 3K, and the bandwidth I use 2.6. So what this means that I'm pushing 3K by 3 dB. I think it's dB. Okay, but only left, only on the left guitar. On the right guitar, it's also set to 3K, but here I'm not boosting, I'm attenuating. So I'm cutting out 3 dB with the same bandwidth, which makes the guitars sound even wider. I record two, I pan them left and right, hard panning, like all that there is to the left and to the right, to make it sound very huge and wide, as wide as possible, like that. And then I add this tube equalizer, which gives it a different color kind of on the left and the right channel of the guitars, and it makes it sound even wider in my opinion. So let's try without. Again, very slight, but it's something, and a little bit of something goes a long way in the end when you arrive finally at the stereo out. Okay, so we had drums, bass, and rhythm guitar. The last thing here is the C4 method. Probably everyone has heard about that. It's a multiband compressor, which means that I'm only compressing this frequency spectrum from 80 Hertz to 351 is what I have set it here. That means that only this frequency spectrum is affected by the compressor, and that is where the palm mutes are. Usually when you record and you have palm mutes, they will be very loud. It sounds like this. And now to tame that and to make that more even, but still have it like smacky. I want it to smack, kind of. That's what I want to describe it. It sounds good to me. The palm muted guitars sound amazing. So, but they get too loud. So I use this trick. Normally I would set it so only the palm mutes are affected. Here you can see the guitars are affected all the way through, but especially the palm mutes are compressed. This time I just feel like that's the way it sounds better. I haven't figured out why I have to set it this way and why I cannot set it up so it just affects the palm mutes. It just sounds better that way. So I'm gonna keep it that way for now. If somebody knows what I need to do different, please go ahead and tell me. But that's it then for the guitars. Here I have the buses that I use for the side chaining. That's the method that I use. Maybe there's something smarter. Here all of the drums come together in the drum bus. This is compression, parallel compression on the drums. So the drums play here all together. And then I have a compression track, which is just the same but heavily compressed and together. Sounds like this. That's the way most people do it, and it sounds amazing. And then I have a little trick that I also learned today from Misha Mansour, which is a distortion bus. So this is bus number 5. What I'm sending here, I'm sending the drums, and I'm sending the bass and the guitars, everything. I send them here, and then I distort them heavily. And it sounds like this. I think with the, I don't know, the notes, the overtones or whatever from the distortion, it kind of fills up the maybe the empty space in the mix that is remaining. I don't know. It just again glues everything together, because I want everything to sound like coherent, like as one track with clarity, but still as one track. And I feel like this helps with that. Then we talked about the snare verb, and that leaves the stereo out, which is my mastering channel. And for now I'm just gonna turn all of them off, see how it sounds without. Obviously very silent, because here at the end I'm using the a limiter, which is just well, it's limiting, but it's also giving back all the volume, so I end up around 0 dB, because if I play without it, maximum when the snare hits is -7.2, and when I engage it, everything becomes very loud, and that's what we want in the end. We don't want to turn on our track after any other track by another band and suddenly our track is very silent. That would suck. So the first thing that I do, and I actually have this on while mixing too, it's an EQ. I'm cutting below 27 around. I'm also taking out some mids, and I'm giving back some highs. Yeah, it just makes everything sound more, I don't know, crisp or whatever funny musician's terminology you want to use, but I just feel it sounds better. Here is without. And what do we have next? It's a linear phase EQ. So for some reason you're supposed to use a linear phase EQ, because whatever, it needs to be like that. Look it up. It's what I remember. But what this does is that it affects the sides only. And what I do with the sides, so what do I have in the sides? I have some drums, like the cymbals and stuff, and I have the guitars, which are completely on the side. And all of those things, they don't have too much bass. There is no bass. There is bass in the kick, and there is bass in the bass, but there is not too much bass in the rhythm guitars or in the overheads or stuff like that. So I use the side only EQ, and I take out all the lows. I cut here, maybe to give the snare some room. I don't quite remember, but it sounded good. So I'm gonna leave it, and then I'm giving also some top end to make it sound a little brighter on the side, cymbals and guitars, to make them kind of shine. Here's without, and here's with. Then the next thing that I do is I boost some low end and low mids, maybe low end, only in the mids. So I'm pushing the highs in the side and the lows in the mids, and that way it kind of gets a little more spread out. I don't know, it sounds a little fatter, but it doesn't get muddy in a way. So here's without. And here's with. Then I have another C4, a multiband compressor, where I'm compressing the mids, the low mids, the highs, but not the bass. I just want the bass to be fat and just, I don't want to make it silent in any time by compressing it, because when I look at the parallax, what this does is it compresses the lows heavily, and that's the only like bass sound that I have, except from the kick, which is also compressed. So I think it sounds better if I don't compress the lows also in the master bus, but this does such a good job at compressing the lows, and you see this is a pretty high setting actually. So the lows, the bass is already compressed. Such a great plugin. It doesn't distort the lows, only the mids and the highs. So it's like a parallel parallel bass processing, which most people do with two separate bass tracks, but it just does it in one plugin. Very easy. I like that because I'm not very good at what I do, so I need things to be easy. But yep, here is the C4 disengaged. And here is it engaged. Slight difference again, but we're getting there. And the last thing that I use is this SSL compressor set to mastering. I like to use presets, actually. Makes my life easier. Most of the time I tweak stuff, but I often start from presets. Here is the track without the mastering compression. And here we have the compression on. And that finally glues everything together once more. It's just slight. You can see it's not compressing a lot. It's just compressing a little, and that's enough. Because I also have a compressor before, and I feel like it's fine like that. It actually sounds very nice. I'm very happy with this mix. I'm looking forward to record some music into this. Obviously I'm gonna add a lot more guitar tracks. I tend to use a lot of guitar tracks because my riffs are not very complex, so I tend to spice it up with some lead guitars on top, stuff like that. But yeah, that's it. For now, that's how I want to start and continue writing some music. Something a little extra. Yes, let's do one more thing. This is it for now, basically. But what I also did was that I loaded up 3 different guitar plugins. Here I have the Nolly one that's been active all this time now. Then here I have the Gojira one, the Archetype Gojira, which I'm testing now for 14 days, and let's see if I want to buy it. Tending towards it. Sounds really good, and it has like a lot of effects, which I like using in the plugin, so I don't have to program something else outside, which just makes my life easier again. I like that. And the third one is the 14 NTS. That was my first one. Still love it. They sound so different, and for this track I find that the Archetype Nolly works best. But maybe I'll leave it in as a template just to switch between them quickly when I record something, because who knows, maybe it's more like death metal, maybe it's more thrashy, maybe it's more groovy. I want to start to choose also the sound for the riff that I write, because usually up until now I was kind of too lazy to do that. Whoops. I just chose a sound that I liked, and then I just stuck with it. But yeah, I'll show you once more the Nolly, then the Gojira, then the NTS, and that's also where I'm gonna end the video then. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. I also hope maybe that you have a tip for me. Like I said, I'm an amateur. I like to build my own music and my own mixes. It's fun, but it's very complex and it's a very hard thing to learn. So I appreciate any help, and I'm happy if we can get into an exchange maybe. But yeah, there you go. See you in the next video. That's it. If there is anything that you want me to talk about specifically, like how to route the drums, how to set up the sounds in the different plugins, or whatever it is you're interested, hit me up, comment something, and the usual YouTube thing, kind of awkward to say it myself for the first time, but like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. See you next time. Bye bye.